trailer or code wire tag trailer looks like. It cuts their adipose fin off, and it installs the code wire tag into the head of all the baby salmon. It's microscopic. It was real tiny, but on that code it tells them where they came from, when they were released, and where they were released, so you can identify that data that you're looking for. And so when you say, well, why, James, why is this all important to talk to me about? Well, it's important because you have to grow the fish from a certain size. And the colder the water is during the year, the longer it takes to grow fish. Typically, it always collides that the fish that they start spawning in like October are ready by March and get lucky and they get to go out early. But the fish that are normally coming in October and early November, those fish that are coming in, those fish are actually not ripening and getting to size when they're released into the river, and they get released in the river in that April timeline, which is a collision course with stripers. And this is the same way on most hatcheries, especially the American, the McCollum, and now Coleman. The Feather River has earlier run timing fish, and that's because they still have sprawl fish, which is that chromosome I was talking about. That's why I said it earlier. One fall run, one spring run. And so you get that sprawl fish, which still comes in that earlier run timing. But typically, like the fish that used to come back on the Sacramento in July and August, those fish are gone. They're just gone. They don't exist anymore. They're few and far between. And so what happens now at Coleman, and which is the only hatchery that's mitigating the fall run on the Sacramento, is that those fish have been shifting later and later, and you're seeing the run coming in later and later. And we have seen this also on the American a lot. And that's because of water temperature is typically not there, enough storage of cold water for the hatchery, so they can't start the American until November. Well, a lot of times those fish are in there in July and August, and they perish. And they die before they even get a chance to spawn or go into the hatchery. And so what that does is the same thing at Coleman, same thing at Nimbus, is that you're shifting the run timing to later of those fish that are coming back, that keep surviving generationally over and over and over. And so what that does is that cuts out periods of windows of when fish do return. And that's how you start losing cohorts of fish that are from certain areas, wherever those areas might be, whether they're from a certain riffle, from a certain creek, from a certain tributary, from the hatchery, Coleman, from another hatchery like Feather or any of these others. There's a lot of different things that can dictate, how those returns happen. And where those fish get released, right? Whether they just naturally come out of the gravel and they start going down and naturally go down. If they do, typically they're fry stage and they've got to stay in the river for often months, and they have to rear and come down the river, and they've got to survive for months and months and months. Whereas smolts, when you see them dropped from a truck, they can literally get dropped, imprint on their drop location, and start their migration directly to the ocean and be in the ocean in 3 to 7 days. And so if those fish are, that's the release strategy, is just to drop them, quick imprint, and get them to flush out as fast as possible, especially if you have a coordinated pulse flow. Then, that might be a good release strategy, because you have to release them in April, and you have to release them at least geographically high enough in the river so that they imprint on that river, because the strategy is possibly that we have to move fish from one hatchery to another, which has never been done before, but these people are trying to help save salmon. And so I understand that it's not the right time, and I understand you're sitting on your boats, and I understand people are putting a lot of posts out, showing the boils of the fish, and thousands and thousands of the fish are going to die, and they're going to get predated. I'm hoping that some are getting out. And I know some are, because we have acoustic tags that are pinging down the river. And what we've posted those websites, you can check those out. And the federal government is doing a lot of things of reading where these highest areas of predation are. And we're trying to identify if there are certain hot spots at certain times outside of the standard striper spawning migration from basically March 25th to about May 25th. So if you look at those, two, predation events, and you take away those individual releases in the river where there was a lot of predation on our hatchery smolts, the reason that was happening was people were trying to move fish from another water basin directed by the state to try to help rebuild the Sac, because the Sac's in so much trouble that the alternative is that we never fish for them again. And so that's why I started this whole thing with, I hope everyone understands the gravity of this situation. We are in some serious times to where, trucking all of our fish for the last 18 years was very aggressively sought after by certain groups, because the river conditions were killing the fish and they weren't getting out to the ocean, and we weren't getting high enough abundances for fisheries. Well, that has backfired now because we've lost a lot of the imprinting with a lot of these fish. And rather than coming up with different release strategies, which what we're doing now, and to come up with different methodology, and to come up with different monitoring, which we're all doing now, it's all underway, it just takes time, is now what the big plan is, and the big reveal of, what are we going to do to rebuild this system? And the only alternative is that, they get listed by somebody. And now at least, there's no way that, that's going to ever benefit fishermen. And you ask me why? Because our group, way before my time in 1989, in the 80s, was involved when the San Joaquin dried up and went away, and we lost all of the San Joaquin fish. My group was involved with that. Our founding members were involved with that. They're still on a lawsuit from that, back in the, early mid 80s. It's insane. And, I will just tell you that, when you start looking at the history of, what really is happening, and the realism of, what's happening, and not just your belief or your ideology of what you want the river to do, are two different things. And, we have to rebuild this system if we want to have salmon. The main stem was the largest contributor of the amount of abundance of fall run Chinook out of the Central Valley. It's number one, and it's collapsed. So if it's collapsed, we've got to rebuild. And that's what everyone's trying to do. They're trying to raise more fish. They're moving millions and millions of eggs around so that Coleman can raise millions more salmon. They're trying to move fish from other hatcheries, other state facilities. The state has stepped in and moved fish. We posted the releases. They moved fish to Redding to start rebuilding that upper Sac. They moved fish towards the Red Bluff area. There was fish in Butte City that got dropped. There was the Coleman National Fish Hatchery is moving some fish on some experimental releases of, moving fish downriver. And so they dropped at Colusa. They were trying to move them below, all the fish that are between Colusa and Butte City. I understand that they got predated upon too. I get it. There were fish that were released in the bay that got predated upon. There were some bad predation events. I got some text and some video of some avian predation that was pretty bad on one of the releases. It happens, you guys. And we have to understand that it happens, but that's not going to be the one side fix all, because there's all of a sudden predation. Bass and striped bass have lived with salmon for decades. Striped bass have lived with them for almost 150 years now. When striped bass thrive, salmon thrive. They both need cold water to spawn. Same with sturgeon. They need cold water to spawn. Same with steelhead. Same with all anadromous species. And if we don't have cold water pool saved up, then the only alternative is death. And so we as humans have to mitigate for that loss. And that's how you do it, through artificial hatchery propagation. And nobody in the angler community that I know is upset with that. They're happy with it. Everyone's ecstatic with it. Raise more fish. It's our slogan. Let's go. Go check out all of our merch that we've got at ncgasa.org. Check it out. It's pretty cool stuff. There's more coming, but I mean, the reality is that we are trying to make sure that we raise enough fish to rebuild this system naturally to have these fish stray back into the main stem. We need them to stray back into the main stem. We need fish from the feather. We need fish from the McCollum. We need fish from the American. We need fish coming from Coleman. We need them all to stray. So if we can get enough fish to start straying, then we can have enough females to spawn naturally again, and with the proper water management, which is being advocated for and been discussed with the water districts and telling them, hey, this has been happening with the dewatering. And they're like, oh, well, we can probably help solve that. And it's like, wonderful. So I think that there's ways to work with people and to get the solutions that we need. Unfortunately, there's no quick answer, and that things that are happening today affect us in 3 years. So things that I'm involved in now in the meetings with others and everything else, that is going to affect 2025 spawning now. 2024 releases, 2024 brood year, those releases are happening now. That affects our 2027 seasons. And then things that happen this fall will be for our 2028 season. Sorry, spitting at everyone talking. So I say all this just so that you understand that there's a lapse in fisheries management with salmon. You have that average 3-year life cycle. It used to be 4. We used to see 4 and 5-year-olds. We're seeing typically 3-year-olds with a lot more jack and 2-year-olds in certain years, and less 4-year-olds and very, very few 5s anymore. So with these code wire tag, the way that they're monitoring, and that's the only way they've been monitoring since I think 2006 is the correct date. And so since that's the only way that we monitor, we have to wait for these fish to grow in these hatcheries. Then they get tagged. They have to hold all the fish. They can't just hold the ones with code wire tags and release the rest. Even if there's a really good water event, they can't do it because they have to find a way to monitor those fish. And the only way they can monitor them is putting them out together so that as they're recovered, they can use a 4x multiplier and then determine how many fish, they should be seeing back throughout the carcass survey, the hatchery surveys, and the harvest inland and in the ocean and sport fishing and commercial fleets. So it's required that if you catch one with no adipose fin, that you have to give up the head so that they can get that code wire tag out. So that's why these fish are held so long. So I hope that kind of answers, like, people are like, why are we doing the same thing over and over again and it's still failing? And the answer to that is because of the way that the policy and rules read to monitor those fish, federally and state, requires the code wire tag in the head as the primary source of monitoring and management. And therefore, you have to hold all of your hatchery fish hostage in order to get to the size to tag them, which typically runs all the way to April and May, which collides with striped bass. So when you release fish in river, from Butte City to Red Bluff, the fish still imprint in the Sacramento from Battle Creek, from Coleman. When you release them in Rio Vista or the Bay, they don't come back. So we're trying to find the sweet spot and the in-between, between where is the furthest downriver that you can release these fish, the earliest, the smallest, with the highest survival rate, that will contribute the most to the ocean and return the most to the river as adults 3 years later. So that's the big question. And we know Butte City has had programs that have been done that we were involved with for years, experimental studies that showed some very interesting results and some multipliers of survival and returning adults 3 years later. And, that's the problem. Like, we're doing the net pen this year, and the net pen project, we won't have any data for 3 years. So it's hard when you're working with salmon because of the delay of the 3 years. It's very difficult. The results that we're seeing from some of the things are normally because of the advocacy for 2 or 3 years ago. So what we're going to see moving into the future in the hatchery side is the adoption of parent-based tagging. And when you see PBT or hear PBT, that's what that means. And PBT, parent-based tagging, like I said, is Ancestry.com. It's basically genetics. It's a genetic strain sample of tissue that shows the DNA of the mother and the father, and therefore they can determine the offspring. And so if that's the way we monitor, and in the ocean now, in the future, probably start this year, maybe we'll see a little bit of monitoring. And tissue samples are taken. It used to be, GSI sampling out in the ocean, but now it's going to be more so for PBT, and they're going to sample every fish, not just ones with no adipose fin and a code wire tag, because they'll still have the code wire tag for a while until we get completely through that, which probably will take 10 years. But you will start seeing a lot of sampling of tissue, and that's to determine how well did those fish survive, because we're releasing them at times now that they're fry. They're like real small. They could be button-up fry. They could be unfed fry. They could be fry fed to 500 a pound. They could be fry released in certain times. They could be a study release or a nighttime release or tributary release. There's a lot of different strategies that are moving forward in the discussions. Trying to rebuild the Sacramento River. Like, how are we going to do it? Where have we lost fish? Where do we see a large concentration of natural spawning fish historically, and identifying those areas of maybe those are high rearing areas in the Sacramento River, then why they supported such great, strong natural spawning populations in those certain areas of the river between Redding and Red Bluff, typically, which is that like 40-mile stretch roughly. So when we talk about the future of this PBT, this is going to allow us to now have the genetic code of the fish, so it doesn't matter when you release it. So you can release it at any life stage that you want. You could do it as eggs. You could put them in egg injection tubes now, and you can now move as many fish as the state and federal government are willing to allow. And we can start rebuilding some of these areas that have lost these natural spawning populations. Huge success right now in the Yuba with that cold water pool and egg injection up there above Bullards. And, above rim dam projects are a much more difficult project, and I have my concerns on them, but, being able to proof of concept is there, and it works. The fish are hatching and living, so if they have what they need with water, then they will do well. So having that access in the future for these hatcheries is what's needed. And the Feather River Hatchery and DWR is on board. They've already started releasing PBT this last year. Big thanks to them. The American Hatchery has already been doing it for 2 or 3 years now. Big thanks to them. And Coleman's been doing it for about 4 or 5 years with experimental releases, but we'll really know if there's any contribution this year. But I think that with the water conditions the way they were, I think survival was very poor. Often survival, even at smolt stage, back to returning adults is 1/10 of 1%. Whereas that, you'll see sometimes featherfish at half of 1% or up to 1%. But when you truck featherfish, you get often 1.5 to 2.5, sometimes 3.5%, depending on the release of adult survival all the way back. So you take a million fish, and you're talking, that's a lot of returning adults, 35,000 adults that could contribute, to harvest in the ocean and then harvest inland and then returning to the hatcheries and to the river. So that's what you want, right? Is you want to have those higher contribution rates with your releases. So it depends on the methodology behind those releases. Like, are we trying to get the highest amount of survival for the ocean without worrying about strays? Because if that's the solution, then you just truck everything out and it doesn't matter where they go and they come back. If you're trying to rebuild then you have to try to move fish into the basin that you're trying to rebuild. And so all of the fish are now sitting at the state facility these last few weeks. They're finally of size. They're finally tagged with the code wire tag. And so they can be moved into the Sacramento basin to try to help rebuild. And so that's kind of what happened and why it all happened, with multiple hatcheries trying to help. And a lot of those fish got predated, but we're just hoping that enough get by to survive to start rebuilding. And I understand there's a lot of concern and comments about the predation that took place. And I'm going to tell you that it takes place all over the Delta, the Bay. You see it everywhere at all of the release sites. The net pens, sometimes you see predation events from multiple different species, just depending on where you live. So guys in the river, I know that you're seeing it, and I know it upsets you because you're thinking the fish are, wasted. But I will tell you that, we've got to try to believe that a few of them are going to get through and hopefully start returning to rebuild. And I understand that those results are not acceptable to a lot of you, and it's very frustrating. I'm just telling you that the agencies are doing what they can do with their hands tied right now because of that monitoring piece of the code wire tag. And they're doing a great job. But with PBT now going fully online, I anticipate every year more and more fish of the mitigation fish and all enhancement fish being shifted towards PBT, which will allow that diversification, which the Bridge Group, George Bradshaw, PCFFA, myself, Johnny Atkinson with Golden Gate Fishermen's Association are working on really hard with the Bridge Group and others and other members. Not to just, list everyone, but I mean, there's a lot of great people in that group and a lot of great people that are fighting hard to really be on the front lines of how do we solve a lot of these very complex problems and issues. So PBT and getting us online with the laboratory so that we can do this genetic analysis and sampling is the hardest part. The lab's going to be a few $1 million, but the hardest part is going to be staffing to turn over the amount of genetic samples needed at the end of a season from a fall winter carcass survey, and taking all those samples out in the river of all the dead salmon and then turning that data over in time to set the ocean salmon seasons in March and April at the Pacific Fisheries Management Council. That's what everyone sees as one of the largest challenges. The second largest challenge of moving to PBT away from the code wire tags is going to be the monitoring in the ocean. They have to take tissue samples now of all fish. Same with the inland. They can't just attack the 25% with the code wire tags in their heads. They now have to go after all of those fish, but then they need to sample all other fish now too to get genetics of all salmon that are out in the ocean to try to really, figure out, this is really going to tell us what's really out there and what's what, right? I know for years there's always been guys that are on the Sacramento saying, all of our fish went up the feather, all of our fish went up the feather, or feather guys going, oh, feather fish are up, up in the sack. And, it's funny. It's funny because I've heard it for decades now. And I've really looked at a lot of the analysis and the code wire tag data that's out there, and it's all on our website that's available to you so far and available to us. And, it's really interesting because when you look at it, you can see that there's certain correlations and certain patterns with certain hatcheries and certain release sites and survival rates and other hatcheries about the way they release fish and do night releases and have the real passion to make sure that their fish survive. And I'll just say that when you see those when you see the playbook open up for a hatchery manager, I think that that's really exciting. Because right now they're hamstrung with that code wire tag. So when they start leaning more and more towards PBT, that's going to then say, okay, hey, we got fish at 120 a pound. They're looking great. All right, feed them one more time. There's a big rain event coming in tomorrow. We're going to let that whole raceway go. And they let them go. And then they track them through genetics. And, hey, we're getting a huge rain event. It's going to be a massive flood. It's going to be the best time to release fish. What's the date? Oh, it's March 5th. Well, normally they're not ready for code wire tags. So sorry, we're going to miss this event. But now we've got a new tool in our toolbox for the hatchery managers with PBT, which now gives them the freedom to say, let go eight raceways, let them all go, let them go, get them out of here, kick them out the door. And I think that that's very exciting because the future looks bright in that manner. And that was one of the largest, things that we've been advocating for now for 5-6 years. And, worked alongside with, George Bradshaw and PCFFA. There was a press release that the state did that we made some comments in about the advocacy that's transpired over that for years. And very happy with, all of the partners that really worked on PBT with the state on the state side. And the state is really taking the bull by the horns and trying to go that direction because it is the future. So with that being said, anticipate better things happening and less collision courses happening with predation events that you see. There's always going to be predation. But I think that if we let our fish go earlier too, they're not going to be as domesticated to where they're used to feeding on the surface. And I think that that's another problem because instinctually as a bait fish, you ball up together for safety and they get together and now you're floating on the surface waiting to be fed because that's all you know. You just got dumped into the river and that's, what's going on and those fish are getting whacked. If we release these fish a little bit more timely to follow Mother Nature of what the natural fish would do, I think that you might not have as high of a survival rate, but we can raise more fish and raise the number of fish that we need to mitigate the loss of the hundreds of millions of eggs that normally were laid in the gravel, which, that was literally hundreds of millions, 438 million to give you a rough number from the 90s, throughout the 90s, and into the 2000s, you're talking an average of 438 million eggs that were laid in the gravel in the Sacramento alone. And the last 3 years, we've averaged 16 million eggs have been laid in the gravel alone. So you're getting less fish coming out of the natural component as you are from the hatchery, which is starting to, that's why the collapse happened. So, with that being said, that PBT monitoring for the future will allow Coleman to release those fish earlier. It'll allow them to move them to Butte City in February now or early March, and they won't collide with the stripers as hard. And I think your survival rates will go up, and you'll see good returns from those. I think you're going to see the state agencies continue to drop fish everywhere and help. And I hope they do. I'm so excited to hear them, doing this because it's what's needed. We've lost that main stem and we've got to save it. So anything and everything at this point, I think all hands on deck, like let's flood the system with fish and just keep flooding the system with fish until we have a ton of fish coming back and then we can sort it out. That's my ultimate hope. Getting onto the main stem hatchery, our group has been advocating for this since 2019. We've been working with congressional leadership and we'll be going to Washington, D.C. with the entire salmon industry. And the four of us will be going. Our lobbyists are setting up meetings for us and trying to go back and visit and advocate for the federal new hatchery that we've been working on for a number of years. And now it seems that there's a lot of support for it. And I think that, you're going to see some good positive things happen from that. And hopefully we can get a new hatchery online in the next, my hope would be honestly within the next 5 or 6 years. And I think that we're on life support until then. If we, and the problem is that if you can't get a hatchery online even sooner, you still have to raise all those fish and then you have to wait 3 years until it really affects the system. So, theoretically, we're in trouble for the next decade. And that's, on the Sacramento, it's going to be a rocky road. And, this year, geographically, they've shut down all the inland fishing from the Golden Gate Bridge all the way to Keswick Dam. So that's 300 miles of the Sacramento River is closed. And that's also, no fishing in the Delta Bay and a lot of communities that love to fish recreationally and a lot of businesses that want to fish. It's going to be very little opportunity this year. So When it comes back to the new hatchery, it will have to be on the main stem, or it would have to be a build out of Livingston Stone Hatchery if that was the only solution, which is right at the base of Shasta Dam. But we need to raise tens of millions of fish. We need to raise 20 million smolt. We need to get those 20 million smolt directly trucked from the Sacramento main stem water to the ocean. And that should contribute 2.5 to 3% every year, if released properly. And that would be roughly, about 500 to 600,000 fish for the ocean, on top of all of the Macalamy fish, American fish, feather fish, and normal Coleman fish. If the Coleman, continues to operate, that would be a wonderful thing. We hope that, they are going to continue to do this. But if you end up building a new main stem hatchery, our advocacy and what we're going to try to advocate for is that, the hatchery would be capable of, running tens of millions of fish, more than any hatchery that we have currently online. It needs to be a hatchery capable of raising 75 million fish. It needs to be a hatchery that is raising consistently 50 to 60 million, with, drought monitoring on hand. If we lose a cohort in a river or a tributary, that we can rebound and raise an extra 10 million fish and start, reseeding these areas. I think that that's unfortunately the future, and some people might not like that. But without that, we're not going to have a fishery, we're not going to have recreation salmon, and we're not going to have an ocean fishery. And on top of that, it also affects Oregon. The Sacramento has affected all of Oregon stocks, and it's putting more and more stress on their own stocks, because historically up to 40% of the Oregon fleet's catch recreationally also was always Sacramento and Klamath stocks. And so because our stocks are so depleted, their ocean fleets are putting more stress on their own stocks, which is, another issue in itself. So it's just like effort shift, everybody who knows salmon goes halibut fishing or rock fishing, or, and puts more stress on those other fisheries. So, we all love to salmon fish. We all want to go salmon fishing. There's going to be a small opportunity, a 2-day window, in June, and there's going to be, I think, tens of thousands of anglers that go out, and it's going to be all over the news. I'm just praying for everyone that no one gets hurt, and that's my number one concern, is I just pray that no one will get hurt. And if the conditions don't allow it, I hope people don't go, because that's my fear, is that when you only offer 2 days, people are going to go no matter what. So that could cause a lot of problems. There'll be a little in-river fishery in the feather and the American this year, so call your guides and get them booked, because there's only a limited amount of days that are going to be allowed. It's a 1-fish limit inland this year with a quota on hard cap quota that won't be hit, because, like I said, 95% of the geographic area is completely closed. So it'd be very difficult to hit that quota. But anyhow, get a hold of everyone, get a hold of your guides, get a hold of your friends, and, know everybody's excited to go try to catch a salmon. The commercial fleet's going to be tied to the dock for the 3rd consecutive year, and it's very upsetting. Our fleet, as I just mentioned, 95% of it's going to be closed. It'll be a small little fishery for a few little time periods. We're grateful for a little opportunity. We're just hoping that the numbers are accurate, and that we see the fish come back, because it's been very dismal the last decade. So anyhow, our organization is also working on all these earlier release timings, diversifying these release timing strategies, release timings, recommending certain things, attending multiple meetings on how the fish are raised, where they go, and how they could help strategically move them around if there are higher predation events in certain sections of a river, or if there's a ball of fish, or trying not to do a release more than 2 days at the same release site, trying to do releases at night if they can and they dictate, trying to do releases on outgoing tides out by the Golden Gate, trying to move them as far west as possible. I know a lot of people wants to do that. big shout out to, we're going to have kind of announcements. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments right now, and I'll go through the comments last. The organization's fighting for you guys every day, and we need your support. So make sure you go to ncgasa.org and sign up, support us, buy merch, donate to the nonprofit. We definitely need you. We're going to have our first halibut derby in Humboldt Bay on July 19th. That's going to be an exciting event. Our North Coast board member, Kenny Priest, Fishing the North Coast, is going to be up there running that event for us. Super excited. One-day event in Humboldt Bay, California halibut. Get ready to get signed up for that. There's going to be a maximum amount of entrants, but going to be a real fun time. Going to be prizes for the kids. There's going to be a lot of great things, maybe even a game there to win a nice rod reel. A lot of great sponsors up there that are going to be up there, and we'll be spoiling the kids as usual and having a great event. So make sure you mark that off on your calendar, July 19th in Humboldt Bay, and get ready to get signed up. Sign-ups will start next Monday online, I believe, and there'll be a big announcement on social media. So I'll go through all the comments. Anything I see a comment from Steve that says, still confident in the 260 to 360. Yeah, I am, Steve. I think that, the question is like I always said, is like, how many of those are going to come home? And that's where there's such a variable. It's so hard to predict and guess, right? I'm going to still say, I guessed before the season, before all the numbers, and everyone knows that I've been really accurate for a lot of years. So I'm probably going to lose this year. This is a tough year to predict, but I'm going to go with no fishing. There's 184,000 fish out there, SAC index, that come home. So depending on how many we catch out of that 184, which the quota says 7,000 max in the ocean and 8,000 max in the river, so that's 15,000. So my guess would be like escapement might be in the 160s. And if it is, that's going to be great. The question of that 160s is how many are in the Sacramento? Because this is the cohort that has the best chance of rebounding. This year class cycle has the best chance of rebuilding with all the good water that we have and stored behind Shasta Dam. So, I think there still is in the 200s, Steve, out there for sure. It's just going to be, which ones do we go catch? And that's going to be the real question. So, only time will tell. But yeah, I'm going to stick with my answer, stick with my gut. I do think that, there's 60 to 80,000 fish that are from the SAC index that will stray to other places and go into the Stanislaus, Tuolumne, the Bay. They'll go in other streams, Napa, Poudre Creek. There's people saying the last couple of years there's fish going everywhere. So definitely think it's going to happen. So hopefully you go get your omegas and go have fun out there on the ocean. Mark, has Coleman commented on the state getting involved in releases of smolts and redding? Yeah, Mark, I would say that they have. I will say, to be fair, I don't think they knew it was going to happen. I think the state really stepped up and went and just did it. They did tell them they were going to do it a couple of days ahead, but they were just going to do it because it's what's needed in order to try to help boost. So fish that normally would be trucked to the bay and go out to the ocean were moved into the river to try to help, get a few back to help rebuild. Sacrifice, tens of thousands of fish to try to get a few thousand out. Literally. That's sad to say, but that's kind of where it was at because of the way that they collided. But that is the reality. But I think everybody's on board now of realizing how bad it is and how much help we need, because it's not going to be enough just to do the same old thing or raise an extra 10 million fish. It's going to take tens of millions of fish, multiple years, over a decade to really get going. And then you could probably tone down some of the releases as the stock rebuilds naturally in the river and naturally builds away and increases its fitness genetically, which will take a couple generational cycles, you'll start seeing a real strong spawning population again. So hopefully that answers. Jim, I see, love your time on fisheries. Thanks. Yeah. And I see the last thing was just the halibut derby announcement from Kenny. But all right, well, I think we went long enough. I think I hopefully covered a lot, of, the Sacramento River and kind of everything that has transpired. I know there's a lot of things that I could get into real detail about the net pen project, but there's YouTube videos on that. So go check our YouTube, smash the subscribe button, and go check out the videos and the things that we're doing there. Go check out the, the releases, the acoustic tag studies. Go check out that information. We've been putting a lot of the charts and stats and data up so you guys can go look at all of that. And go into the science and document section of the website. There's a lot of information there if you want it and you want to go dig for it. It's out there. It just takes a long time to go through it because there's so much data on fall run salmon. There's a lot on winter run. There's a lot on spring run. There's so much data on fall run. And we can't let this species go away because this is the last one we're allowed to fish for right now. So we're doing everything we can to try to encourage, advocate, and recommend to all state and federal agencies the gravity of the situation and the need. And I think that they understand that now, and I'm really grateful that they're trying to really help build, this system back. And the next couple of years, as we do more. Management with this PBT, you're going to see more earlier and earlier releases into the Sac River. So those fish will start going in February and start going in March. We've got the rice field thing going to finally go online. Cal Trout worked with the state for years on it, and the farmers worked for years with the state on it and could only get a few, tens of thousands of fish and always needed to do it on a high level. And the bridge group finally got Coleman to agree to 1 million fish, and that could get increased to 2 million one day. But 1 million fish are going to start going in the rice fields too, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that this year. And we've been part of that now, which is crazy because it all started with the Ningiri project and some scientists that had theories that were hypotheses that came out absolutely correct and were really good data and information, and that it really opened everyone's eyes that how the importance of opening floodplains up to rearing salmonid juveniles is so important, and for feeding and the growth rates, and then the timeliness of getting out the system is very important. So hopefully you're gonna hear a lot more on that this next fall and other projects, and I'll be doing update live, probably do a couple live videos from DC too, so watch for your calendar from May 5th through 9th, and hopefully we'll see some stuff there, do some live videos of all the work that we're going to be working at. But we definitely need all of your guys' support to keep trying to rebuild the Sacramento from all of our advocacy, and we want to earn your support, and we're thankful to all of our thousands of members, thankful to our hundreds of guides that we represent and businesses, thankful to the commercial fishermen that we represent, the charter fleet that we represent that are out in the ocean, and the thousands of recreational salmon members that are out there. Remember that there's been a real collision, but I purposely wore a striper hat tonight and our original salmon logo. They can live together, and we can benefit for our children and our grandchildren in the future from both species. I think we can also, benefit from, trying to rebuild a lot of these other fisheries like white sturgeon and steelhead. We have to mitigate for the losses upstream of the dams and downstream of the dams. And we've ruined these populations now, and we have to, it's our responsibility from the agency perspective to rebuild these and to bring them back iconically for all recreational anglers. And so we're real excited for the future, and hopefully we get there faster and sooner than what we're anticipating. But we are in need of these big boosts right now. If we don't get these boosts, I am fearful for how bleak some of these years' returns could end up in 3 years. Like, I'm really concerned about what the 2027 returns are to the upper Main Sacramento. So, only time will tell at this point. So when you go fishing, catch feather fish, catch American fish, but leave those Sacramento fish alone out there, you ocean guys, all right? So make sure you talk to them. If they look like a sac fish, you gotta let them go, all right? But just playing. But we want to target those McCollum fish. We want to go catch all of Bill Smith's fish. Go harvest all of them. He had too many in the river the last couple of years. And go attack those American fish and those feather fish and go get them. And we want to thank everybody. All the support's been great. We're going to keep fighting for you. We're going to keep advocating for you. We work on salmon every single day, multiple hours a day, literally meetings every single day, trying to fight for salmon, fight for a future, fight for the rural communities and in the Sacramento River communities, the ones that are most affected: Yolo, Sacramento, Yuba, Sutter, Butte, Glen, Colusa, Tehama, Shasta, just to name a few of them. But I mean, those are, the main counties along that Sacramento River that are heavily affected, and the Delta communities, the Bay communities, everyone's affected by salmon. The ocean communities are affected heavily by salmon. So I see a last couple comments about seal management. We're going to do a little live video, or I'll do a podcast one day on seals. I'm not going to get into it today, but they're way overpopulated. 200-300% overpopulated of what the original management goals were, and it's a nightmare. They need management on those species. We need management on a lot of different species that are not intended to carry over a carrying capacity, and when they start moving into habitat that is not suitable for their species, i.e. downtown Sacramento docks, the fish shouldn't be there. The seals shouldn't be there. Sea lions shouldn't be there. They need to be in the correct habitat, but this is California. So, how much decimation do they cause the salmon? We don't know, Kevin. There's no monitoring on pinniped predation. There's none. They have a guess of natural mortality rate that's in the model, but they don't actually know what that is. Yeah, Mark Woodard, the Moke has more fish than we know what to do with. Please catch them. Yes, sir. We will try. So we'll see what happens. I see Larry said the Sacramento River needs more water. Are there any releases planned down Knight's Landing? Yeah, I think that no other releases down there that I know about right now. I think there's a few more releases that are going to happen up north, and I think the Bureau is going to give out some pulse flows. Coordinated pulse flows. The reservoirs are pretty full, so you're going to see some nice pulses here in May with the fish that go out in May, and hopefully their survival is better than average. But they could go into collision courses. The other real negatives of all these other releases, if you wait even longer and you say, well, just wait till May or June, the difference is that those water temperature thresholds get so bad in those late months. The river's never meant to be cold at that time, and so the fish die. They can't survive in 70-degree water, 75-degree water when they're needing at that earlier life stages. In eggs, they're needing colder than 56, and then they're needing colder than 60 while they're in their juvenile stages, and they can start handling higher thresholds when they get older and smolt for a little bit, but historically they're wanting to get out and they're wanting to get into the ocean, which is at the correct temperatures for their species. So hopefully that answers that, but none down by Knight's Landing that I know about right now, Larry. It could be a topic of the future of moving fish down there real early in the year, trying to get them out early, like in February, and seeing if rearing them from Knight's Landing area down to Sacramento is enough. And you've also got the Delta Cross Channel that opens up on May 15th every year, and that sucks a lot of our salmon down into the eastern delta and down into the pumps, which is guaranteed death, and they don't even have a chance to get out to the ocean. So you've got all these little factors that I don't have enough time to talk to you. I'm already at an hour and 25 minutes, and I'm going to cut it. but you don't have enough time between the time of holding these fish on hostage for the code wire tags, for that monitoring by law of how they have to monitor those fish, to May 15th is like a 6-week window. And it's the worst window ever. They don't want to wait till after May 15th, because if they wait till after May 15th, then all of the fish from the American River up, those fish are highly susceptible to diversion and mortality. And there's nothing you can do about that. So that's kind of a problem. Another comment came in, sea lions are managed by the federal government. So there could be some changes. You never know because of this administration. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Again, last shout out, go to our YouTube channel, smash the subscribe button, NorCal Guides. Tell your friends about following our page. Go check out our documentaries that we've put out over the years. Check out all the videos that we putting up more and more content for you all. I hope that's helpful. Please comment on there. Please let us know if you like the content. Please comment below or email us and let us know what you would like to do. Let us know what you'd like to see, topics you'd like to discuss. We're also open about thinking about having open dialogue communications on like Zoom. And so we can host a Zoom where we could do like a topic about predation and really get into predation and just only talk about predation and try not to go off into the tangents. I know that my brain goes off in way too many tangents when I talk salmon because there's way too many factors, but prepare for that in the future, and we'll get into some more topics about many different things, and just let us know what you guys want to all talk about, and appreciate all your support. And again, if you're not a member, please go sign up at ncgasa.org. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.